Welcome to De-Stress Your Business, the podcast where we show you how to get incredible results in your business without constant stress. I'm Alexis Kingsbury, a serial entrepreneur and founder at AirManual. Now, many business leaders are currently wondering whether artificial intelligence has got real business applications, and many others have tried some AI, but not really started using it in earnest day to day, which leads us to question whether, is this just a fad? Is it going to really add value? So I wanted to share some of the practical ways in which AI is already being used by businesses to solve real business problems. So in this episode, I'm absolutely thrilled to be having a chat with Alfred Goldberg, who's the founder and president of Absolute Marketing Solutions. Now, Alfred and his team have been at the forefront of digital marketing and technology for about 2 decades, implementing a variety of tools and more recently AI solutions in creative and innovative ways to drive business growth, both for him and his clients. And he personally is using AI tools, or is using a variety of AI tools daily in his business in loads of different ways. So I reached out to explore some of the practical benefits that he's getting, what the experience has been with his team, and what advice he has for other business leaders. Let's dive in. Alfred, could you start by sharing a bit about your journey and how Absolute Marketing Solutions came to be?
So the company actually started as a software development company called Absolute Mobile Solutions. And we were developing applications for the old Palm Pilots. That ages me quite a bit there. From Palm Pilots, we went over to Nokia, which you're probably very familiar with on the other side of the pond. And then eventually BlackBerry. And then Apple, Android, like everyone else. So we had a strong technology software focus for most of the life of the company. And we found more and more of the things we were building had a marketing application to them. Mm-hmm. I had overseas operations in Romania, and we had little satellite offices throughout Europe. And about 7 years ago, my business partner and I split, and he kept the software side and I kept the marketing side. So that's how we became Absolute Marketing Solutions. But having so much background in technology, it's always played a major focus in what we're doing. So whenever new tools come out, it's one of our principles that we explore every potential new tool and see what we can do with it. We believe a lot in experimentation. And anytime you have new technology, that's the best way to do it. All the reports of it being a silver bullet or killing this industry, killing that industry, we hear that with every new technology. Yeah. You just have to tune it out, play with it, see what you can do, and maybe you can find some novel uses that give you an advantage.
Nice. I love that. And so particularly when we talk about something like AI, as you say, it's particularly in terms of fear mongering and videos out there about it's going to kill us all, or it's a complete waste of time and a complete fad. Like there's every end of the spectrum in there, as you'd expect for disruptive technology. For you then, with that background in technology and how you use it, like at what point did you start looking at AI and start using it in the business, and how has that then evolved over time?
Probably ChatGPT was one of the first ones that we got into, probably along the same time as everyone else. But we did recognize that many of our vendors were already incorporating AI components into their technology. So when I talk about AI to a lot of people, even people who hate AI, I'm like, you're already using it. You just don't know. Everything from Google Smart campaigns using, machine learning to determine bids. People do that without batting an eye. They don't realize that there's, AI technology at play. 2 areas we really looked at in the beginning was support for content generation, whether it's visual content or text content, and analyzing content. Those are probably 2 of the first areas we looked at. That's obviously expanded. These days we use it for mundane tasks like give me 20 tweets for this particular subject, to sending out a press release, a media pitch. The other day, one of my nonprofits I serve on, they wanted to reach out to some local politicians and invite them. And instead of just sending out the regular generic letter, I dropped the bio of each of the politicians into an AI and then said, write a letter tailored to this particular person's bio. Much better letters. And it's a little early to know what the result is, but my guess is we're going to get a better response than if we had just sent a generic, hey, come on down and see what we're doing type letter.
Love it.
There's obviously still a lot of challenges with different AIs. We've seen people, competitors, even marketing companies, who are on that camp you mentioned that are terrified of AI, and they're already preemptively going to social media and posting anti-AI thought pieces. Don't fire your content marketing team. AI is not going to replace us. And I'm like, I hope they're also secretly on the backside exploring this technology, or they're going to find themselves in trouble. Because if you paint yourself into the anti-AI corner and then AI becomes the acceptable means, you have some receipts out there that it's not your focus.
Yeah.
AI research is very interesting to us. We do marketing research for our clients, and usually that was either doing surveys or buying the report. And AI's kind of help with both of those. AI can not only help us discover reports, so we're not dealing with just one report vendor, but it could perform research of its own, and it can also help create those kind of surveys and tailor them to particular groups. So
nice. On that research point, because I think it started off there with sort of content generation and so on, and I agree. I've seen it work really well for that, and particularly the more tailoring that you do, like the example of those letters. And in fact, the more that you do in terms of, let's say you get it to create a letter, and then you work back and forth with it to get something that you're really happy with, all of your skill, and then you can kind of say, right, this is the gold standard. Now repeat that, but here's this, and so on. And so I've found that works really effectively for then creating something that's of the quality standard that you want, but then using the inputs, as you say, like different bios to create something tailored. So I've seen that work really well. On the research side, I've seen mixed results. I've seen it hallucinate complete falsehoods. Like I remember I just to experiment, I asked it, tell me 10 things about the UK-based entrepreneur Alexis Kingsbury that most people wouldn't know. And there was a mix in the 10 of some things that were semi-accurate, partially accurate, or plausibly accurate. And then there were some things in there, I think number 5 was Alexis was listed as one of the 100 most influential female entrepreneurs in Forbes magazine. And then it links and it creates a hyperlink, which looks like where the hyperlink would be, except that, it's a broken link. You click on it and it's broken. And it's amazing that it knows what the link should look like if that was a real thing. And so I've found that as a bit of an issue. And I've seen other people that I've spoken to about AI will say things like, oh yeah, it contains the whole internet. And of course the risk is be very careful with that assumption, because firstly, it'll misremember bits of the internet. It'll create entirely new things of the internet that never existed. And so how have you got it to work well for research in those kind of applications?
there's so much misinformation on the internet that even if it did contain the entire internet, then it contains a lot of misinformation. But the fabrication, it's like you don't want your AI to be dishonest, and fabricating a link to nowhere is pretty dishonest. I'm currently working on a book, and I used it to help with some of that. And I was reviewing it, and there was quotes from John Doe again and again. And the quotes were just so generic that I'm like, no, they just made up a quote. This is ridiculous. But they say trust but verify with AI. So don't necessarily trust, but yeah, verify.
Yeah.
I had to pull a table of stats, and because it gave me some statistics, doing some research. And statistics, I'm like, okay, well, it'd be nice to have a table to back up those statistics. So I asked it to give me a table, and the statistics it gave me in the paragraph didn't match, but it did cite a source. So I went and bought, because it was behind a paywall, the actual study, and neither of them matched, the table nor the statistics. So I just rewrote that part using the actual study. Yeah. So, maybe it points you in the right direction, but it's not all that believable. Kind of like the
Mm,
caterpillar in Alice in Wonderland. It didn't necessarily lie, but it wasn't that helpful. You know,
yes.
it just gave you some information, but it was up to you what you're going to do with that.
And in that case, like I might argue that a Google search may have got you there faster, right? Like getting data to support an assertion, or even getting data, like getting some statistics. Like a Google, a standard normal internet search that would go and get sort of third-party information that is then sourced, and at least you can find out whether someone just said it in a blog and have they referenced it. Like you can do that. I might argue, wouldn't that be quicker? So where in researching are you finding AI does add the value and has that edge?
I would say that being inside, for example, ChatGPT, your mind is there, you're thinking of the right
Mhm.
inputs, the right prompts, and it's one thing after another. To shift out of that mode and go into traditional Google search mode, to me, would be a bit of a mental shift. I'd kind of lose the direction I'm headed. So I'm letting the AI give me the research without just believing it and then reading it and based off that, adding additional prompts. But you said, the Google search, that's exactly how I verified. That's how I took the
True.
statistics I gave it and I said, where else have these statistics been used? And let's see the actual source. And, I don't want to say I'm cheap, but I don't want to pay for research if it's already out there somewhere.
Yep.
Because I may need just a little nugget. I don't want to pay $500 for, a much more in-depth research paper when I'm really just looking for a table. So I use Google to try and find that information elsewhere, and that's usually where you find, oh, this is not adding up. So let's highlight this section because I think the AI pulled one over on us.
Yes, yeah, and so I can appreciate that. How like when you're in flow and creating perhaps a creative piece of work, like a book or a social media post or whatever, I can get how having it give you the nub of something, and even if it's inaccurate, but at least is formulated in the ideal way. It's I suppose it'd be the equivalent if you were just writing it without any AI support, the equivalent of kind of writing, quote here. Include quote here about something along the lines of, if you can do X, then Y is your outcome. Like it's, I suppose, the equivalent of putting in that sort of, ideally, I'd have a quote that explains this, or I'd have a statistic that explains this, and so on. And I suppose you're kind of using it in that way. So it's almost like you end up with a structure that you're happy with, and then you go get the data rather than spending loads of time on the data, losing an afternoon, and then actually finding a load of data that doesn't even make it into your final version of the content anyway, which is an experience I've had many times before. So, okay, I can see how that would kind of form part of that research exercise. But I think, yeah, that's definitely an area that I'm sure will improve over time. But I've seen heavily misused in the past, where it's, oh great, look, it's got all this great information with sources and so on. It's like, no, all of that needs checking and completely removing. So cool. So you talked about some of the ways in which using AI. Talk me through some of the other. So content production, do some of the research. What are some of the other ways, like specific ways in which you're using AI, perhaps internally with, that your team are using it? Because you've got a team of like 40 people across Absolute Marketing Solutions. So, how many, give us a sense of the scale of who's using it. Is it like you and a couple of leadership team members? Is it basically everyone who's using some of the AI tools that we're talking about, like
I
ChatGPT?
probably use it the most. It's almost
Mm,
like I fell down an AI rabbit hole, but again
yeah.
and again, I mean, every staff member has probably at least touched AI.
Mm,
But to really, experiment with it, I think there's probably just three or four of us. But as time goes on, I expect to see more and more of it. Like my social people, they tend not to use it to generate, potential posts because I guess they feel like, oh, it's going to replace us. I'm
mm,
like, no, there's so much more you do. Use it. You don't have to take those posts and use them, but all the time, it only takes a few seconds. I see that it generates some good directions to look at. It helps you stay on brand voice too, because you can give it a voice. Say this like Amelia
yeah.
Earhart or, whatever your brand personality is supposed to be. It may take your exact captions that you wrote yourself and redo them in a particular voice. Um, Brainstorming, this is one that's hard as a Gen X creative type
Yeah.
because we were taught almost a Salvador Dali, Pablo Picasso approach of go offline, go out in
Mm.
nature. I think Salvador Dali used to lay in his bathtub just to get a
Yeah.
different view of things. So we were always taught technology is a crutch. If you start with technology, it's going to stifle your creativity. And we're experimenting with AI brainstorming, and some of my people who are closer to my age are like, "What are you doing? Why are you on a computer? Why are you talking to technology?" But I have been pleasantly surprised by some of the
Mm.
creative ideas it's come up with. And not everything sticks. You still do a spaghetti test, throw it against the wall, see if it sticks.
Yeah.
And so I find AI can very quickly create hundreds of potential ideas that would have taken hours of a focus group that you don't have.
Mm.
So we do occasionally use it to generate long list of ideas, and then we vet them out in a group. And so far, I'm happy with the results.
Nice. And so when you're talking about there, like creating ideas, presumably you're talking about examples where you've actually done that as part of like client marketing strategies, right? Where you're looking to come up with ideas of how might we pitch this, or how might we create some social posts around this particular content or content angles. Have you got any kind of specific, like real examples of success stories of where you've done that with clients and the examples? Because I know that from my own experience, I was preparing a presentation that I was going to give to like 500 entrepreneurs on how to free up 15 hours a week and make AI your new best junior employee. And I thought, you know what, just for fun, my opening line, I want it to be a really attention grabbing like opening line. Let's see what AI can do. And I used it to create some lines, and was none of these are as good as the one that either myself or my business partner kind of came up with. I'm not keen, and I felt like it was a test that the AI failed. And so I shared this with a friend that I was seeing that evening for dinner. And I said, I sort of shared, I don't feel it did a good job, but I thought, let's test this. Blind, you're going to see the four lines. Two of them are AI, two are human. Like, I'm not telling you which do you prefer. And he picked the AI. And I realized it's like, oh, I'm filtering based because I knew which ones are AI. I'm the one filtering, and I'm the one going, oh no, this is wrong. And so, exactly as you talked about before, like the spaghetti test, I put them out there on LinkedIn and Facebook and got people to vote, and ended up with getting the votes and so on. And it wasn't clear cut, but the one that got the most number of votes was an AI generated line. And so I think that's really interesting in terms of, firstly, my own bias that was limiting, but also the fact that it genuinely created something that was better. Like the fact that other people thought, yes, this would attract me more to this presentation, shows that it's better. So have you got examples of where you've done that with clients, and what's been the impact of that?
We've had some mixed results as well. We had a client who was participating in one of those food competitions, Iron Chef type thing,
Yeah.
and they requested that the chef come up with some smack talk. And we're like, okay, let's see what the AI could do just for fun. And it was so cruel, the things it came up with. There's no way we could have said it.
Amazing.
It was like,
Well,
your sushi's so bad, the seagulls wouldn't even eat it.
I
You should commit ritual suicide. It's like, oh,
mean,
we can't do that.
I mean, on the flip side, I might apply that same lens that I was holding and saying, but perhaps you're in the wrong, right? Maybe that is exactly what that show needed to absolutely catapult it.
What's funny is at the time, they were all chummy, and then the restaurant ended up losing due to some technicalities they consider unfair. And so now they're like, they should have used those lines. Because now it's like they're not friends anymore, and now they're not so worried about the other guy's feelings. And, maybe that would have thrown them off a bit or something.
Yeah,
But
in post.
exactly. We have not necessarily a client. I mentor a lot of entrepreneurs, and there's a veteran group here that they take veterans who want to start businesses, and they provide them with coaches. And they have a audience made up of religious institutions.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted to introduce them to AI, and we went from the brainstorming stage where we say, First, the research. Who are the major decision makers in order to sell this product or this
Yeah.
service? And it told us basically that the pastors were the key people. And then we said how to get past the gatekeepers to the pastors. And it said, here's some ideas you can offer the pastor that would benefit the pastor. And then we said, based off what we've described about the product, what would be the best thing to give the pastor? And it said a series of podcasts or informational blogs dedicated to this challenge of pastors. And then we said, what is the biggest challenge pastors have with, healthy lifestyle, I think it was. And it gave us like 20 topics. And I let them go from there. I said, there it is. You got your 20 topics. You can create podcasts. You can get those in front of the pastor, skip the gatekeeper because you're not selling anything. You're providing something of value. Then you can leverage the same material, maybe get some radio spots, get some publicity. And it was like there was still room for creativity and also understanding marketing and consumer behavior. But the AI did so much heavy lifting from the very inception to them currently right now filming the third podcast.
That's
So
amazing. I love that. And as you say, the heavy lifting that the AI has done to do that, and as you say, there's the trust and verify issue. There's the throw it against the wall. Like if you just went ahead and implemented all of that, there is risk. Whereas if you then get some pastors and talk to them and say, hey, this is what we're thinking. How might this play out? And if they said, oh, we're not allowed to, we don't even have access to podcasts because, you go, oh, okay, well, that's useful information. Or, yeah, of your 20 topics, only 3 appeal to me. That would all come out in that validation exercise. But as you say, the heavy lifting is done. For you, like given your industry and what your company does, I know that, Alfred, you're really great and on top of the technology and so on. So I think you're, top 0.0001% of companies in this kind of industry. So I'm confident that you're going to stay ahead of the curve and always be in a good position here. But talk to me about the risk to your business there, because some people could listen to that and just go, oh, so I don't need the marketing agency. Like I don't need the content agency here. Like in the example that you've just given, it's like, what value did you actually provide? And I'm throwing that in to be like black hat on, right? So how do you like process that and reconcile that? Because there is loads of people out there that have got similar or even scarier risks to their business where AI could seemingly or actually replace a lot of the activities that they currently do.
So I actually pursued 2 courses of study in college, and one of them was history with a focus on technology change.
Mm-hmm.
So, from the Luddites smashing up weaving machines and throwing them into the water to the radio going to demoralize the American youth. I've read these stories my entire life, so I'm not one who's going to worry about doom and gloom. When they tell me the robot's going to take all the jobs, I say, learn how to repair robots. And then when the robots start repairing themselves, I'm like, well, it's going to be a new world, but you can't fight it. There's no off-ramp here. One day I could see websites will be generated per user based off AI and not require, upfront. And that will probably be better in the end. When call centers were opening, and I said I had that large office in Romania, that was one I dealt with a lot. People yelling at me for stealing their jobs. I'm not stealing the jobs. Software developers are still making great amounts of money here. Yeah. But there is a value in sending work overseas. With AI, it's the same thing. I think it's inevitable. AI is going to take on more and more of our business. To your earlier point about marketing being one of the industries that people say, well, what do I need a marketer for? They're already saying it. Not just because of AI, but because they don't really understand the value of marketing and what it is. Part of my book I'm writing is the difference between what I call little M marketing and big M marketing. An example of this is a business hires a person who seems to know how to use TikTok, and that's their marketer. That's not marketing. That's TikTok. That is one channel of one tactic. You got to know a lot more. So we already have that challenge. And of course, we're hearing about, can't I just automate my social media? Can't I just have my untrained employees taking pictures and posting them? Why do I need to worry about what my competitors are doing? Can't I just trust Google to run my ads for me? So there's already a lot of that going on. And if you cannot demonstrate your value above those tactical things, then you probably are in trouble. But if you can show your strategic value to a client, then AI is just one more tool in your bag.
Nice. I love that. And I think it probably speaks to a wider trend that, as predates AI, which is the value of demonstrating results and impact, right? Is
Okay.
that over the years, I remember when marketing agencies were basically able to sell themselves on the basis of good news, we'll do a load of stuff for you, and the reality is that most people, the smart people, now ask questions about good, but now show me the kinds of results that you get. And I remember when marketing agencies go, well, it depends, but it's like, okay, but if you can't give me any examples, any data of the impact that you've had, then I'm not interested. And of course, marketing is one of those areas where it can have a huge impact that is tricky to measure. Like, it's like you can do billboard ads and get no result. You can do radio ads and get no result. And then you do billboard with radio and suddenly you get loads of results. But of course, they're not using a QR code or clicking on a thing, they're searching for your brand name. And so you won't even necessarily see that it's come from that route. You'll just see like an uptick in your demand and so on. And so, yes, it's hard to do those things, but like the smartest, the best and brightest in this kind of space are still able to work out ways in which they can measure it by proxy and give illustrations. And so I can see how what you're saying there is like, yeah, there is a big difference between, oh, good, I've got AI putting out a social media post for me 8 times a day on every channel, versus I'm creating content that actually resonates with my ideal customer, results in them reaching out and interacting with us and ultimately becoming customers. And those are, in theory, two things that's like, oh yeah, both of these are marketing, but the result is vastly different. So I love your approach there. More generally, like, how has AI affected stress levels in your business? Because my podcast, De-Stress Your Business, we're all about like, how can you reduce the stress in various different ways? AI is one of those areas where you could argue in many ways it could add a lot of stress, both in terms of fear, but also in terms of lots of change and derailing the team and all this sorts of stuff. So how's it impacted your personal stress levels? And then perhaps we can talk about your team, because you mentioned that there's examples of them being more reticent as well. So yeah, how what's the stress level impact been?
So I feel less stressed myself because a lot of the stuff that I feel just must be done, I feel more confident will be done
Nice.
because AI does a lot of the heavy lifting. You can come up with some content pretty quickly if it's content that we're talking about, or we got a last minute, hey, we got to do this pitch to the media. I know it's only 2 days before print. What can you do? And in the before AI, I'd be losing my mind. We'd have people working later shifts, but AI can help so much with that, combined with other tools and platforms.
Yeah.
I mean, AI by itself is pretty wonderful, but integrating it into your workflow, I think, is what makes it different. So understanding where it fits in and what the improvement will be to the outcome, to me, relieves stress. To the
Love that.
employees, the older ones, just it's a change. As much as we teach our customers that they have to be aware of changes in their industry, we have to do the same. Political, economic, environmental, technological, sociological, legal. Got to keep an eye on all that. No one's really come to me like really freaking out. At the same time, their lack of use implies that they're either not sold or they're wary of it. That, what in the old outsourcing days, people used to complained that they were training their replacements, and many times they were. And I feel like some people are wary of the AI because they feel the more they can demonstrate what it's done, the less likely we are to want to hold on to them. And, in both of those examples, I think it was true. Some people are training the replacement and they had no hope of getting a better job afterward
Mm.
because maybe they weren't really all that great to begin with. And I feel that people who are terrified of AI, just like a business has to demonstrate its value and understand what its value really is, maybe they need some coaching and some help to understand what their value really is. So if anyone ever approached me directly with concerns like that, I'm just like guessing that they have these concerns. But if it was, clear, I'd say we would have to work on coaching them a little bit more and understanding that, they didn't go to school for 4 to 6 years to be replaced by an AI, that
Yeah.
schools taught them how to think differently. And there's still not AIs making hit songs or hit commercials. And maybe we'll be there someday, but right now, you still need that brain power.
Yeah, indeed, and it's funny you mentioned like hit songs and so on. Like there's been a couple of examples recently of some songs being created using AI. I know there was a David Guetta song that was done, and then there was one with Drake and The Weeknd, where the one that was done by David Guetta was done by David Guetta, and so it was like it's all fine. Whereas the Drake and The Weeknd one was done without knowledge of either of those two artists, and had all sorts of copyright issues. And both are like great pieces of work that people like and so on. But it raises the point of, but would they be without the human that put it all together, right? It's not like the AI just created the music. There was a human behind it using AI to create those same things, frankly, only in the same way that they're using audio software anyway, right? Like the fact that we can't tell whether or not when you're hearing that what sounds like guitar, whether it's guitar or synthesizer now, like the quality of that kind of stuff is done so well, it's only the same, right? It's still, you've still got human that's doing the curating and the bringing together. And I suppose that links to right back when you were talking about content production and creating tweets or creating the book, is still there's the human working out what's even the thing that's worth doing. What is the venture to be gained and the opportunity here, rather than if we just put AI on a sort of autopilot spitting stuff out, there'd just be so much noise. It'd be very difficult to kind of pick out the signal from that. So
That's an interesting analogy, the signal to noise. That is a big part of marketing, is being the brown cow or purple cow, as Seth Godin calls it.
Seth Godin, yeah.
Being able to stand out. We have an expression here. I used to have a David Bowie, Ziggy Stardust statue here, and it was to remind everyone the same is lame. He didn't want to just be another artist in the British invasion. He was, a visitor from Mars, neither male nor female, just something completely different. No one had seen anything like it. And with marketing, if you can get a client willing to take those risks and you have the creativity to create something that different, then you're going to succeed usually. And there is a fear that if everybody started using AI and AI is learning from what other people are doing, then all of a sudden everything is flat. Like it's no longer anyone standing out. It's all similar content. And I don't know how well that fear is warranted. That's in the spectrum of it's going to kill us all. That is, it's not really all that good. I don't think it's going to kill us all, and I don't think it's going to be that bad. I mean, if you really play with AI and throw it curveballs, sometimes you're impressed. And then, like you said in your example, some of them you're like, but then the crowd liked them.
Yes. Yeah, indeed.
There's back to music theory, they say pop songs, there's certain patterns that hits have, and that would be good for an AI. It would understand that. But then you get someone like Frank Zappa, and it's like, I don't know if it could have come up with what Zappa came up with.
Yeah, and I think that's a really useful way of looking at it, I think, because often I think my experience of using AI is sometimes it feels like it's giving you the average of what's out there. Like, so if you just say like, write me a blog on XYZ, it's giving a very average blog. It's not the worst. Like you can go online and there are some terrible, poorly written, badly worded blogs out there, but it's definitely not the one that gets, shared 1,000 times and so on. So it's kind of giving the average. And I think that it's funny, pop music is a nice example where that's for decades we've talked about pop music as being formulaic. People say, oh, Coldplay, every song sounds the same and all these sorts of things, and you can use the same 4 chords to create any piece of music. And while there's some truth to that, it's like if that were true perfectly, there is already enough knowledge pre-AI to therefore use all of that and just generate many versions of songs that fit that pattern. And as a result, you would expect that there are instant hits going out every single week, brand new music that we all just go, oh yeah, we all love this and it's so catchy. It's like, that is not the reality. Creating those catchy hits that they have in Disney films or pop music commercials and all these sorts of things is hard work that requires a lot of iteration, and there's more failures than there are successes, even though those formulae and so on are known. So I think that's a really good example of how it's like, AI doesn't suddenly generate all the most amazing stuff and so on. I want to pick up on something you mentioned before, how you embed AI into the workflow, because I think we've both had experiences where we use AI as tools to do arguably sort of one-off tasks or creative tasks, like, oh, I've got this pitch for this particular client, or I need to produce these ideas for this campaign or these tweets and so on. But there are other ways in which we can kind of use it more ongoing. And in fact, we got connected when a mutual friend of ours, Topher Morrison, shared my ebook on using AI and ChatGPT. And in that, we've got a checklist on like for team members, so on how to get to grips with this kind of stuff. Because as we've talked about, like, it's not uncommon for other people in the organization to fear it or just be completely oblivious to it or fearful, or reluctant with it. And so you kind of do want them to at least get up, using it enough that they can have a play and appreciate it. But one of the other things that, we write about in here is about how you really, to get ongoing efficiency and benefit in your organization, you kind of need to build it into those processes, those like the regular things that you do, rather than require it to be something that someone goes, oh, I could use AI for this. Like if they do that, they'll probably spend 4 hours researching how they could use AI to do it to save them 20 minutes. So are there examples in which you've kind of specifically like embedded it into standard processes, ways of working for either you or for your team, and what are the sorts of tools that you're using for that? Because we've talked a lot about ChatGPT, but what about like other tools and how you're using those in your ways of working?
So before we started recording, I think we talked about scaling up and traction of the EOS system. And I mentioned that as a agency, we've long had systems and processes. So we use Notion. We previously used Confluence, but we've recently, about a year and a half ago, switched to Notion. Notion has AI capabilities in it, but inside our Notion, we have process documentation for just about everything we do. And we've been revising those and introducing go to AI for this, go to that AI for that. We're also working for a company called Neural Internet. They're an AI R&DAO. A lot of letters in that.
Yeah, R&D, so that's research and development, DAO, digital asset something?
It's a type of organization. I can't quite remember.
Okay.
I don't think the DAO part's important. At least it's not to me. They've been helping us try and figure out ways to implement AI where we don't have it implemented.
Right.
And that's been very interesting. I can't really go into details, kind of secret sauce type stuff. And it's so early, it's hard to tell if it's even done what we want yet. But I think that's where the agencies should be, is not just telling everybody, like you said, hey, don't forget, use AI to generate your press releases, but putting them in there. And then, we have meetings just to discuss new ideas about how we can use different technology. And one of those would be, for example, for our PR people, how can AI increase our relationship with reporters or improve our pitch approaches to particular reporters? Can we, for example, give it writings by a particular reporter and build a profile of that reporter and then ask it, how should I do this for this reporter? How should I
Right.
do that with that reporter? So that's something that, is in an experimental stage, but could become part of our normal media outreach processes to build these profiles of reporters, these AI personas, if you will.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, so I can imagine a step-by-step process that would involve probably using some AI to help you do the research of where are the right publications for this type of product and content to reach this audience. And then, as you say, saying, okay, so out of AI, I go find the particular journalist and their content, feed that into the AI to say, here's the sorts of things they write. Now write me some titles, but relating to the product that we're promoting that they were likely to publish, and then a story written in a similar way, which again you then edit and so on. And I can see how building that into a process means that you can have a relatively junior person in your team manage that end to end, collaborating with AI to generate it, and then a senior PR person who's probably an ex-journalist who can actually look at it and go, yeah, it doesn't quite have the hook, and it doesn't feel current enough, it's not edgy enough, or it's gone too far, or whatever, to add that experience to then finesse it before then creating the tailored email or letter or whatever that goes to the journalist to even pitch it. So I can imagine having that in each stage of the process. And what I love there as well is that you've kind of started with, which is something we talk about in the book, is like, generally it's a bad idea to start off with the tool. Like if you go, oh, hey, here's this new tool I found, Descript or, slide.ai or whatever, like that's generally quite a slow way of getting to benefit. Whereas I love how you've approached it, which is to say, okay, the problem we've got or the opportunity, the goal is how do we interact with the journalist in the right way that means we're likely to get our article shown. Okay, now work backwards. Where can we use AI to help increase either the likelihood of it happening or the efficiency with which we can get to that result, which I think is awesome. And sorry, go on.
I was going to say, we always tell our clients you always have to put the customer first.
Mm-hmm.
And the flip side of that is I tell my employees, anything you're generating, whether it's by AI or you're doing it yourself, is being consumed by people. And the better you understand the people, the more value you're adding to this equation. So the AI may spit out content, but it still comes down to you recognizing that this content is going to be received by a human being who's going to love it or hate it or be ambivalent to it. What is your assessment of that as another human being who, the computer's not a human. It's not going to be able to say this is going to go well, like those insults or those jibes I told you about earlier. The AI thought they were all equal probably, but
Yeah.
when we read them, it was like, wow, that's, going to start a fight. That wasn't the intent.
Yes. Yeah, indeed. No, I like that as a key point. Okay, that's cool. And then, as you said, we've talked a bit about ways in which AI can be embedded in various processes, and then you mentioned as well, like there's some secret sauce stuff that we can't talk about around where you identify either building your own sort of AI on top of existing platforms, I suspect, or looking at just utilizing tools in particularly innovative ways that you kind of build in, as you say, as part of your secret sauce. And it's interesting because similarly for us at AirManual, to some extent, in terms of process documentation, Notion would be a competitor to us. And so it's been really interesting to look at how competitors have been implementing AI, and for us to spend a lot of time looking at what do we like and what actually doesn't work. And there's a lot that I can see that where some products have been really quick to release it because it's PR worthy and so on, like there's some really poor wasteful implementations. And I think Notion might be an example where it's like you can kind of say, hey, create this thing, and it'll spit out a load of content, but it doesn't like for example, hey, create me a policy document on this, but it's a lot of noise. We talk about signal versus noise. Like there's a lot of noise there, and you'd have been probably better with it using ChatGPT, where you can go back and forth a bit more to end up with the kind of result that you
It's
want.
funny you say that because we do that. We use
Yeah,
ChatGPT. We don't
yeah,
use AI. It's there. And we might use it for something within Notion, but like content generation, no, it's not good enough.
No.
Same
And
thing with a lot of the art stuff. You've got deep AI, not as good as Jasper art. Jasper art's not as good as, what's it called? Blue something over on Discord.
yeah,
That one is doing some amazing stuff. I don't know if you've played with it.
with Blue, not with Blue. No, I've done a lot on the sort of some of the artwork on like Mid Journey and those sorts of things.
Midjourney is great too. Blue Willow is
Blue
the name.
Willow. Okay, cool. I'll check out Blue Willow. But yeah, I think, as you say, it's interesting that, say, with Notion, you end up not using the AI that's in there. And for us at AirManual, as I say, secret source, etc. So the stuff I can't talk about, but be confident that we are working on ways in which to make practical, actual use of AI to legitimately like help businesses to solve their biggest problems as it relates to providing guidance to their teams, providing the processes, the onboarding, and all that kind of stuff. But it's interesting that mix of using tools to just make things efficient, using tools to save you time, and then, as you say, like fundamentally changing your product and service offering so that you can deliver more value in more innovative ways is it's a really fascinating area. And I think any business leader that's not pushing themselves in this area. I mean, even I, like most of my peers, they would regard me as an AI expert in this space and so on. I would not. I regard myself as like a few videos or a few pages ahead and have spent more time thinking about it and discussing it with people than most. But even I feel like there's so much more that I should be doing and strategic time I should be spending on thinking about the impact for this. What about like for you and your team? I'm conscious that there's when you're building these sorts of tools into your ways of working, there's also risk, right? When we're talking about cutting edge tools, these tools can fall over, they can change frequently. Like, how do you make sure that doesn't create more risk and more stress in your business than it's worth?
Hmm. That question just created a lot of stress.
Sorry.
If I'm not sure that we're even considering that AI will one day just fail and that our new processes are going to fall apart because of it. I feel it's only going to improve. That'd be like asking Amazon, what if this internet thing doesn't catch on back in the early days? To me, it's a safe bet.
Yeah, fair enough. Oh,
I
good
mean,
shout.
there's many sci-fi movies where comets come by and all the technology dies, and I'm not so worried about that.
Yeah, you have different problems when that comes up. So yeah, that's cool.
I still know
Awesome.
how to hunt.
Yeah, no, I love that. I'm conscious that we're short on time, and I want to respect your time. Are we all right just for 5 more minutes? I've just got one
Yeah,
other quick question I'll ask.
sure.
Is that right? Cool. So I wanted to ask, like, what you see in terms of happening next. And I know that in this area, it's basically impossible to predict, and and like anything can happen. Of course, all the sci-fi stuff. But for you, where do you see the kind of technology? Or perhaps put it a different way: what are the limitations that you're experiencing currently relating to AI, and how do you expect that to change in future?
Hmm. So I'm a big proponent of Gartner's hype cycles,
Yeah.
and I feel ChatGPT in particular has gotten so much media coverage that we're at a point where people's expectations are so high
Mm.
that AI is going to do everything. That's usually followed by a period of disillusionment. So I feel there'll be some failures somewhere, and people are going to back off a bit. But those who stay steady and they continue to look at new applications, they're going to ultimately be the leaders of tomorrow. They're going to employ the technology in new ways that even now we're not even thinking about, while everyone else is thinking it's either going to kill us all or take all the jobs. So,
Yeah. Love that. Love that. I think, as you say, we're definitely about to go into that trough with disillusionment. And I think, as you say, you've got to stay the course if you want to get the benefit out the other side. Well, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for your time, Alfred. I really appreciate you taking the time to share your insights on this. And I appreciate how open you've been about some of what you've learned and what you're using. For anyone that's like interested in working with you and the team at Absolute Marketing Solutions, because I know that anyone listening to this will be thinking, I want really smart marketeers working for me that are at the cutting edge and get this rather than avoid it. What's the best way in which people can find out more about you and Absolute Marketing Solutions?
I would say explore our services on our website, and if there's a particular service you think of is of use, just fill out the contact form and we'll be in touch. We work across the globe, so it's great for us to work in different markets and employ technology in new ways in those markets.
Fantastic. Excellent. I'll make sure that we've got the links in the show notes and so on so that people can check that out. But otherwise, Alfred, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Alexis. It's been fun.
Fantastic. Now, as regular listeners will know, we run a weekly webinar on how to free up 15 hours per week and remove the constant stress of running a business and unlock growth. The feedback that we get from these sessions is fantastic, with attendees taking away a fundamentally better approach to delegating, onboarding, and managing their teams. So you can find out more and register for the next one at airmanual.link/webinar. Finally, if you found today's episode useful, let us know. Share it on social media, tag us in, let us know your favorite key takeaway, whatever feels right. We'd hugely appreciate it. And if you can do a review on your favorite podcast platform, that would be amazing. But otherwise, Alfred, thanks very much for joining me. Everyone else, until next time, have fun.